At the very edge of town, perched atop a lonely, windswept hill, stood an old house that creaked and groaned with every gust of wind. Its windows glimmered faintly in the fading light, and the paint peeled from its wooden boards, whispering stories of years gone by. The house looked as if it had secrets hidden deep within its walls, and at night, it seemed to watch over the valley below. Inside, behind heavy curtains and layers of dust, lived a family unlike any other in the world. Their home was filled with odd trinkets, strange shadows, and the soft hum of mysterious lullabies. The air was thick with the scent of old books and something a little wild, a little magical. The father of the family was a towering figure, gentle but imposing, with a single, enormous bloodshot eye right in the center of his forehead. That eye could see through the darkest night and spot the tiniest detail, but it also sparkled with kindness and curiosity. The mother, graceful and mysterious, had long green fingers that ended in sharp, glistening claws. She could slice through the thickest bread or gently tuck her children in at night, her touch always careful and loving despite her fearsome appearance. Their son, Billy, was a curious and adventurous boy, but instead of ordinary skin, his arms and legs shimmered with smooth greenish scales. Sometimes, when the sunlight hit just right, he looked like a living emerald, and his tail would flick playfully as he darted around the house. Sally, their daughter, was clever and quick, with a forked tongue that flicked out between her sharp fangs whenever she spoke. Her words came out in soft hisses, and she could mimic the sound of the wind or the rustle of leaves, making her the best at hide and seek. Despite their unusual looks, the monster family was gentle and loving. They shared stories by candlelight, laughed together, and cared for one another deeply. They weren't bad monsters at all. They just happened to look a little different from everyone else. But the townsfolk, who only saw the house from afar, were frightened by the strange shapes in the windows and the odd noises that drifted down the hill at night. Whispers and rumors spread quickly, and soon everyone in town was too scared to go near the old house. The path to the house grew overgrown and the gate rusted shut. No one dared to visit, and the monster family grew used to their quiet, lonely life, watching the world from their windows. But then, one chilly evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and the shadows grew long, the silence was broken by a sound no one expected. The old doorbell rang, echoing through the house and changing everything. It was a young man, Tim, delivering groceries. He was new in town. Tim had a cheerful smile and a kind heart. He didn't know about the family who lived on the hill. He whistled as he carried the heavy bags, unaware of the terrifying encounter that awaited him. He rang the doorbell again, puzzled by the silence. The door creaked open before he could move. And then, he saw them. Tim's smile froze on his face, the corners of his mouth trembling as he tried to hold on to a sense of normalcy. But the feeling slipped away, replaced by a cold, creeping dread that crawled up his spine. He had never felt fear like this before. So sudden, so complete. It was as if the world had stopped spinning for a moment. The air around him seemed to thicken, making it hard to breathe, and his heart thudded loudly in his chest, echoing in his ears. His eyes widened in horror, pupils dilating as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Every instinct screamed at him that something was terribly wrong, and yet he couldn't look away. It was as if his body was frozen, locked in place by the sheer intensity of his fear. Standing before him was the most frightening family he could ever imagine. Their silhouettes filled the doorway, casting long, twisted shadows that seemed to stretch across the floor and reach for him. Each figure was more menacing than the last, their faces hidden in darkness, their presence overwhelming. One giant eye stared at him, unblinking and cold, as if it could see straight through him and into his thoughts. The gaze was so intense that Tim felt exposed, as if every secret and every fear he'd ever had was suddenly laid bare. Green claws tapped impatiently on the doorframe, the sharp nails clicking against the wood in a slow, deliberate rhythm. The sound sent shivers down Tim's spine, each tap a reminder that this was no ordinary family. Hisses and growls filled the air, echoing off the walls and swirling around him like a living thing. The noises were low and guttural, animalistic, making it clear that whatever stood before him was not entirely human. Tim dropped the grocery bags he'd been clutching, his fingers suddenly numb and useless. The shock of the moment made him forget everything else. His chores, his plans, even where he was. Cans of food rolled across the floor, clattering and spinning away from him, the sound sharp and jarring in the tense silence. Groceries spilled everywhere, but Tim barely noticed. He wanted to run, to scream, to disappear into the shadows and never be seen again. Every muscle in his body screamed for him to move, to escape, but he was trapped by his own terror. But his feet felt glued to the ground, as if invisible hands were holding him in place. He couldn't even take a single step back. He could only stare back at the monster family, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. In that moment, Tim realized he was truly face to face with fear, and he had no idea what would happen next. Then, something unexpected happened. Little Sally, the girl with the forked tongue, picked up a can of peaches. She held it out to Tim, her hissing voice barely a whisper. "We ordered peach cobbler." Tim blinked and, he could only manage a small, shaky nod. He backed away slowly, never taking his eyes off the family. Finally, he turned and ran. He didn't stop running until he reached the safety of the town below. The monster family watched him go, their figures framed in the doorway, bathed in the pale glow of the moonlight. Each member stood frozen, unable to call out, their hearts heavy with a mixture of regret and longing. The night air felt colder as Tim disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind a silence that pressed against the walls of their home. A deep sadness filled the giant eye of the father, a sorrow that seemed to shimmer with every blink. He had hoped, just for a moment, that things could be different, that someone might see past the fangs and fur to the gentle soul beneath. But now, his hope faded, replaced by a quiet ache that settled deep within his chest. Mother's claws tightened on the doorframe, her knuckles pale beneath the scales. She wanted to reach out, to comfort her children, but her own fear and disappointment held her back. The world outside had always been unkind, and tonight it felt even more distant. Billy, the boy with scales, lowered his head, his shoulders trembling. He wondered if he would ever be accepted, or if he would always be the monster in someone else's story. The shame he felt was heavy, but even heavier was the loneliness that crept in as Tim walked away. Sally clutched the can of peaches close to her chest, her hiss turning into a soft sob. The sweet fruit had been meant as a gift, a gesture of friendship, but now it felt like a reminder of everything they had lost. Tears welled in her eyes and she pressed the can tighter, wishing things could have ended differently. The door closed slowly, swallowing the sounds of their disappointment. The gentle creak echoed through the hallway, marking the end of another failed attempt at connection. As the last sliver of light vanished, the family was left alone with their thoughts and the weight of what might have been. The old house on the hill grew silent once more, its windows glowing faintly in the dusk. Shadows stretched across the floorboards, and the wind whispered through the cracks, carrying away the echoes of hope and heartbreak. Inside, the family huddled together, drawing comfort from each other in the quiet gloom. But the memory of Tim's terrified face lingered like a shadow, haunting every corner of the house. It was a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters are not the ones with claws or scales, but the fears and misunderstandings that keep us apart. And so, the family waited, hoping that one day, someone would see them for who they truly were.